We would like to tell you about our robot, attachments, strategies, and design this season. This summer, before the season started, more experienced team members created lesson plans and taught new students how to program with Spike Prime word blocks and build with Lego Technic. This is our first season using Spike Prime, so the programming language is new to everyone.
Each team member evaluated the missions on the field, looking at point values versus difficulty to complete, activation method, and location on the field. We used this information to plan our strategy during the 2.5-minute run. Our strategy had 3 main points: grouping runs based on efficiency,
Minimizing runs for simplicity,
and using course corrections for reliability. This includes squaring on walls, mission models, and lines, as well as line following. This helps the robot know exactly where it is so it can correct itself when needed.
Another goal of our strategy was continual improvement. Our first year, we had a very basic strategy with simple runs to complete one mission at a time. Over the years, we have strived to improve, and this year has our best results yet for cohesive plan and strategy.
For our design process, we engineered attachments to complete multiple missions. For our first run, we have an attachment called the Hungry Hippo, which can lift up and down to chomp the energy units on the field. It can also push mission models such as the TV and wind turbine. For an example, just last week we added a flexible arm that can collect the looped water unit near the red launch area.
Our next step was to design a robot to fit these attachment concepts. We built a simple test robot with only the motors and the brick to figure out how far apart the wheels would have to be to turn efficiently. For example, we changed the motor positioning so it could turn from the solar farm without hitting the wall. We also experimented with color sensor positioning for accurate line following and squaring with the same simple robot.
Once we had the requirements for our motor and color sensor positioning, we were able to build our robot. We made a list of requirements of what we wanted the robot to include. We only had one Spike Prime robot for our team, so for designing attachments, we used boxes that are the exact shape of our robot called ski bots.
Our next step was to write down exactly what we wanted the robot to do. This is called pseudocode. We use this to develop the programs to control our robot. Here's an example of our pseudocode.
With programming, we use the Spike Prime word blocks to control our robot. Our program has over 300 lines of code. We rely on the gyro sensor for turns, turning until the robot moves through to a certain angle. We use 8 different my blocks, including following lines and gyro headings, as well as for our overall program.
We are constantly testing, changing, and iterating our designs. We would run a program, record whether or not it worked and what we changed, and then run it again. Here are some of the charts we made. An example of some of our iterations is with the attachment for completing the power plant. We started with a passive pusher, but couldn't get the angle right for it to work. Then, William designed an attachment with legs that could hang down to lift up the power plant as we back into it. It was too long, so we added an arm so it could stay in the air as we drive around.
With this attachment, during the qualifier, it took a long time lifting the power plant, so we decided to upgrade the attachment again to make it faster and more reliable. We built an arm that can lift up the power plant with a basket and ramp on the back so we collect the energy unit at the same time. However, we also had size constraints at this point, so we had to make sure that the ramp stayed within the bumper. At the same time, we did another iteration on the way we did the smart grid connector, making it faster and more reliable.
We complete 2 runs, achieving a maximum score of 380 points. We complete 93% of the missions on the field. Our first run starts in the blue launch area, with the hippo on the front and a car seat on the top with the dinosaur in it. This run completes the missions around the perimeter of the field.
Our second run starts in the red launch area, with a passive attachment on the top that completes 7 missions, and we're stopping in the Power to X circle with the Innovation Project model to finish the match.
Yeah, you actually have 2 starting points that you can use.
Yes.
Here are a few of our favorite innovative features. We complete only 2 runs, with our first run focused on gathering the resources from the field, while our second run delivers the resources to the various mission models. Having only 2 runs also reduces time wasted during transitions between runs and relieves pressure on team members.
Our Run 2 attachment is massively passive, with no active motor, scoring 130 points. We are also proud of the fact that our robot was designed to fit our mission strategy and field requirements, and now our attachments simply slide on top of our robot for quick changeovers between runs.
We all enjoy working on all aspects of the robot game, but some team members prefer coding and others building. We all enjoy including everyone, working together, and having fun.
And thank you from Load Robotics.
Question. This is what you have there is kind of like, I guess, the 3rd generation of robots and everything. I go back to the antique robot of Mindstorms. Now, if you have your robot, you start your robot here, and you want it to go there. Okay. Now, is the programming like a click and drag, or
Yes.
is it like coding that you have to type in?
No, it's word blocks. So we click on it and then drag it.
So
We
click
don't
and
do
drag.
the Python or
Okay.
like.
Now, how do you determine start here to go there? How did you tell the robot to go that distance?
So we have different ways of doing that. One way is just to use these normal drive blocks. So this is drive backwards for 2.5 rotations. Another way that I'm really proud of how we do this is we made these my blocks for driving forwards and backwards following gyro headings. So that then we reset the gyro, or we don't reset the gyro, we read the gyro at the beginning of the way we're facing, and then when we start moving, if we start to go sideways, it'll correct itself, so it'll always start driving the way it's facing.
So it's a self-correcting program that's in there.
And we use these as my blocks throughout our program. Let's see if I can find
Now, the
them.
my
Great
block,
news,
would that be equivalent to the old Mindstorms move block?
No.
No?
A my block is the same as the Mindstorms my block,
Yeah.
which is a block that you just make, and then you can say whenever I use this line, this is
So
the
you
line
can
following line.
program
Whenever I
in there
use
what
that
you
block,
want it
I
to do.
have that. Yeah.
It also takes up much less space for our main programs. So instead of having a start block and then all of our program, we just have a start block and then a my block and then another my block. All of our main programs are in my blocks also for less space.
So how did you guys go about every single time you did one of your runs, ensuring that every single point you're scoring is like consistent throughout each run?
So we did a lot of testing. So these are some of our tests that we did first, where we would just run a small part over and over and over again and test and see, did it work, did it not work, and then we would write down what we changed. And then these are some tests. This is one we did yesterday, which my goal for this past week was to run the robot timed in a 2.5 minute run with all three of us 100 times. So that's what we did. This is the last 50. And the ones that are green are when we got our full score, and the ones that aren't was just under our full score. And then we would just run it, each part that didn't work over and over and over again, and see how can we change this, how can we make it better. An example of that is with our attachment for dropping the loop water units into the water reservoir. We started by using these cams like we use for dumping the normal energy units in, but it didn't work quite right, and it only worked about 50% of the time, and we decided this has to change, we have to do something different. So then we came up with this thing that kind of has a stick down here, then we push it, then the thing disappears completely, whereas here it only goes down, and then they wouldn't fall off. So then that makes it much better, and it works 99% of the time.
And all these attachments fit on that.
Yes.
How did you deal with the inconsistencies of the robot? Because I know when I did first Lego Blade, it was horrible the amount of inconsistencies there was with the same program, running it multiple times. Like you did on that chart, right?
Mhm.
You ran it 100 times, but every single time you didn't get the 100 or the full amount of scores you could have gotten, right? So how'd you deal with inconsistencies?
So we use lots of different course corrections. So every couple of missions that we do, we either square on the wall, square on a line follow, drive forward until we see a line, and that means that it can correct itself much easier. And then it kind of knows exactly where it is and can continue on the rest of the run. So even if we don't line up the robot quite right for launch, it'll still correct itself and manage to make everything else work.
Use the color sensors for the black lines.
Mhm. And then we even have a color sensor on the back of this attachment for backing up until we see the line.
Because we didn't want to turn around our robot because our color sensor is on the front underneath our media motor. So this one, when it goes on, it's on the back. So we didn't want to have to turn all the way around, so we just back into the line with this color sensor.
I put a color sensor on an attachment.
It also has a motor built into it for the power plant, and this arm for the smart grid connector.
Are there any other sensors you guys are using other than the color sensors? Or
We have a gyro sensor, but now with the spike prime, it's built in,
okay.
so that doesn't really count. But no, just color sensors.
All right.
And for this attachment, we have buttons because when we have it on the robot, it's really hard to reach in to press the button. So I put this one on top, and then you can hit the big button in the middle. Then with this one on the side, it hits the sideways arrows, so we can switch between programs. And this is our first year of doing Lego League into orbit, and this year with the super powered.
So you have an attachment hitting buttons to run programs.
Yes, it doesn't hit the buttons by itself. We have to
Yeah,
hit the button.
we have to hit
Okay.
the button.
Just because the button is too deep inside of it.
Okay. That's cool.
You guys have skinny fingers in there.
That's what she has to do with this one.
Anything else?
Not in the design.
Okay.
And this is our jig for our second run. When we have this attachment on, it's designed to fit these, so we can drive in perfectly. We just set the robot in there, and then back up so it's perfectly level, and then drive straight forward into the hydroelectric dam. And then for fun, we have some ducks on it. Duck there, duck there, and duck there.
Oh, in your thing you mentioned a ski bot, I think it was. What was that?
This is our ski bot. So when we only have one Spike Prime robot. So when somebody's using that, and another person wants to build an attachment to prototype, we made this, which is the same size. It doesn't work with this one because we modified that one. But it's the same size as our robot. It even has the same bumper. So this attachment can slide onto it, and then you can just like act out the action that you want the robot to do before we program it, because somebody else is using that one. And then it also slides on there, and it fits smoothly. So that's what we do with our ski bot.
What is the toughest challenge your team faced, and how do you overcome it?
I was having a lot of trouble with the attachment due to the power plant. Right now we'd have an arm that just flicks it up in the air, but originally we were doing something passive where we just backed into it and it would lift it. I couldn't figure out anything like how I could do that, so I was having a lot of trouble. But then I was in between meetings, I was on a Zoom call with William, and he helped me out with this attachment that had these little legs that hang down, and it could drag it along as we backed into it and lift it up. And then, but that was really slow for during the qualifier, so now we have this attachment that just flicks it up in the air.
How much help do you get from this guy over back here?
Do you want to answer, Joe, or no? Do you have any other thoughts? I can if you want.
How much did he help you?
Okay. He would help us a little bit, but he would just ask us questions about why things weren't working. He would say, why isn't this working? What can we do to improve this? How can you make this better? And then we would have to make sure that we would have to try to understand his question and figure out what to do, and he would give us the answers.
So in other words, this doesn't work, fix it.
And then he would
But
help
nicer.
us. Yeah, but nicer. And then he would help us by videoing the runs, so then we
Yeah.
could watch them, and he would video them in slow motion because he can reach over the field. And then we would watch them through again and see, ooh, if we tweak that turn here, it'll make that better. And if we do this here, it'll make that better, like that. And then I did a lot of the organizing the meetings, so I made these different slideshows of what we need to work on each meeting, and then I took the meeting notes so that we could look back and look at what we needed to work on.
Did you have any conflicts with each other?
Not really. We've had some sibling disagreements just because we're all siblings.
Okay.
One of them was when I think David and Josephine both were working on the robot, testing different things, and then because we only have one robot, we couldn't figure out what to do. So we built SkiBot, where we can put one attachment on here and one attachment on there, and then both test.
So you not get into any knockdown fights about it. You know, because I remember when I was coaching, this group wanted to do it that way, that group wanted to do it another way, and they were constantly butting heads with each other. So you didn't have any of those problems.
Nope.
So
We
some
all
of-
like to work on everything.
Okay. So like specifically, what did each of you guys like participate in and do? I know you mentioned you did the organizing the meetings in the book.
So I built this attachment, and then we modified it a lot. But I really like it. This one does the energy storage, and it just comes out and the energy units fall off. This one does the toy factory. This one does the water units. This little wall can stop the energy units from falling out of the little box at the bottom of the toy factory. And then these back here are for the innovation project, and 3 energy units for the power to X circle. And then this can lift up the ramp on the back of the oil.
How did you come up with the idea for the designs for all these attachments?
Mostly we looked at the mission models on the field when we were starting, and then thought about, well, this one has a lifting mechanism, this one you have to just collect it, this one you have to push on something. So I like this one, this is my example, and it can lift things and pull on things and push things and collect things, and then when we had that, like for this one, so we had to collect something with that, collect something with this, and also push things. And then this one, we had to collect a thing and then push on something else. Deposit the things that we collected in our first run with that, this one, and then put them on here. And then this one is also a lifting mechanism, so it just goes up this ramp, like Justine said. And then
So for how we came up with this was first we were thinking about like a forklift that could go up and down, and then some sort of conveyor belt mechanism to drop the units into the different containers. But then Josephine came up with this idea of having it completely passive and how it can just go on here. And then we started with these just beams, and then it kind of wouldn't go in right. So then we added these cams on there so that they can roll in better.
Seemed like there was a lot of ingenuity involved with all that. Now, how many times do you think you had to, okay, you came up with a design. How many times did you try it and it didn't work and had to redo it and make alterations to it?
A lot. We did that with everything. Every single little piece we put on there because something didn't work. So, like for example, the energy units would fall into the toy factory, but then they would bounce out of the container at the bottom. So we added this little wall, so then they won't do that. And every single piece has a purpose, and we've added on there because it hasn't worked once out of like 50 times. So we're like, how can we fix it and make it better?
And this one, we just added on last week, and it collects the energy unit as we drive into home for our first run. I mean, the loop water unit, and it's flexible, so we can just bounce off other mission models, and that works pretty well. It's worked almost every time now since when we ran it like 100 times yesterday.
I think it's about 11:15. So, any last thoughts that you want to pass on to us?
I think so.
Noah contributed to the poster, so me and William, we went in our basement to work on the prototype, and Josephine and Annette and Noah, they sat up here to work on the poster. So Noah made this big bat, and his name is Brutus, and then the light show, he drew the pictures, and he folded some of the origami bats.
And then we're mentoring 2 teams in England. So we had different Zoom conferences with them about how Lego League works and showing them our robot and explaining our project. And then David wrote them a letter about how to use core values. Oh yeah, it's in your judges' handouts too.
What do you call that thing again?
The Chiropterocopter.
What is that? Okay.
Thank you guys so much for your presentation. I love all of them. It's very colorful.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right.
Would you guys like to look at this for a few minutes? You can just hold on to it if you want, and then just give it back to us.
And is it also okay if we leave those with you?
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you.
I really appreciate this.